In a world where charm opens every door and beauty bends every gaze, she never expected to be seen, much less chosen. Yet in a single, breathless moment, the balance shattered. A powerful man turned toward the woman no one noticed, and a quiet heart became the center of a storm. Jealousy flickers beneath silk and candlelight, secrets rise where admiration once lived, and a choice that was never hers threatens to rewrite every bond she holds dear. Before we begin, tell me, where in the world are you listening from? And what do you love most about historical romances? In the dim glow of gas lamps flickering along the bustling streets of New York City in 1885, Eleanor Hayes clutched her worn shawl tighter against the chill of the autumn evening. She was no stranger to being overlooked. At 22, with her mousy brown hair pinned in a simple chignon, freckles dusting her cheeks like scattered ashes, and a figure hidden beneath modest grey woolen dresses that spoke of her station as a seamstress's apprentice, Eleanor had long accepted her place in the shadows. Beauty was for others, for her dearest friend, Isabella Langford, whose golden curls and porcelain skin turned heads at every soirée they dared to attend as uninvited guests. Isabella was the sun to Eleanor's moon. They had grown up together in the cramped tenements of the Lower East Side, daughters of Irish immigrants scraping by on dreams bigger than their pockets. Isabella, with her laughing blue eyes and curves that filled out corsets like they were made for royalty, dreamed of escaping their world. "One day, Ellie," she'd whisper as they mended lace for the elite, "a gentleman will sweep me away to mansions and silk gowns." Eleanor would smile, her heart aching with quiet envy, and nod. She never voiced her own hidden longing for love, for a life beyond the needle and thread. That fateful evening, everything changed at the Grand Vanderbilt Ball, a spectacle of Gilded Age excess that spilled opulence onto Fifth Avenue. Eleanor had only agreed to accompany Isabella because her friend had begged, promising it would be their greatest adventure. Dressed in borrowed finery, a faded blue gown that hung loosely on Eleanor's slender frame, Eleanor felt like an intruder among the glittering crowd. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbows over silk ball gowns and tailored tuxedos, while the air hummed with the strains of a string quartet and the murmur of fortunes being whispered. Isabella shone. Heads turned as she glided through the marble halls, her emerald gown hugging her form, a borrowed pearl necklace at her throat. "Look at them stare," she giggled to Eleanor, squeezing her arm. "Tonight, I feel like a princess." Eleanor forced a laugh, her stomach twisting. She lingered near the punch bowl, unnoticed, watching as Isabella caught the eye of the most powerful man in the room. Alexander Harrington, the steel tycoon whose railroads snaked across the continent like iron veins. Alexander was a force of nature at 35, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp green eyes that pierced through pretense and a jaw set like forged steel. His black tailcoat and crisp white shirt bespoke quiet wealth, the kind earned in smoky boardrooms and ruthless deals. Whispers followed him, heir to a mining empire, bachelor sought by every debutante. He moved with purpose, ignoring the simpering heiresses, until his gaze locked on Isabella. Eleanor's breath caught. She saw it happen, the subtle nod from Alexander to his aide, the way the crowd parted as he approached. Isabella flushed, her laughter bubbling as he bowed low. "Miss Langford," his voice rumbled, deep and commanding. "Your Grace lights this hall like dawn over the Hudson." Isabella curtsied, her eyes sparkling. They danced, her hand in his, the envy in Eleanor's chest blooming into something sharper, a pang she couldn't name. But then, as the waltz swelled, Alexander's eyes drifted, past Isabella's radiant smile, past the admiring throng. They settled on Eleanor. She stood frozen, half hidden behind a potted fern, her plain features illuminated by a stray beam of light. Time slowed. Isabella noticed too, her brow furrowing in confusion. "Ellie?" she called softly, but Alexander was already striding toward her, his expression unreadable, intense, almost hungry. "Miss Hayes," he said, extending a gloved hand. The room hushed. Whispers rippled like wind through dry leaves. Eleanor blinked, her heart pounding. Why her? She was the plain one, the shadow. Isabella's beauty was legendary. Eleanor's was a myth untold. Yet there he was, the tycoon who could have anyone, choosing the girl no one saw. I don't dance," she stammered, her voice barely above the music, but his grip was firm, pulling her into the swirl of skirts and polished shoes. As they moved, his touch sent a forbidden warmth through her. "You've been watching me all evening," he murmured close to her ear, his breath stirring her hair. "Not the lights, not the gowns. Me." Eleanor's world tilted. In that moment, amid the perfume and finery, she glimpsed a possibility, a choice that could shatter her quiet life. But danger lurked in those green eyes, a storm brewing beneath the surface. What did he see in her that no one else did, and at what cost would this unexpected favor come? As the music faded, Alexander leaned in. "Walk with me tomorrow, Eleanor, in Central Park. Dawn." It wasn't a question. She nodded, dazed as Isabella approached, her smile strained. "What just happened?" her friend whispered, hurt flickering in her eyes. Eleanor didn't know, but deep down, a spark ignited, a hope she dared not name. Little did she realize this choice would unravel secrets, ignite rivalries, and bind her fate to a man whose empire hid shadows darker than the night. If this tale of unexpected love has captured your heart already, hit that like button to show your support, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more gripping stories from the Gilded Age. Drop a comment below telling me what city and country you're watching from. Let's connect across the world. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in soft pinks and golds as Eleanor hurried along the winding paths of Central Park. Her heart raced faster than her footsteps on the dew-kissed gravel. She had barely slept, her mind replaying the ball's whirlwind, the tycoon's unexpected gaze, the warmth of his hand on hers. What madness had possessed her to agree? She smoothed her simple cotton gown, the one with the high neck and modest skirt that reached her ankles, its faded green fabric a far cry from the silks swirling around her last night. No corset pinched her today. She moved freely, if anxiously, her freckled cheeks flushed against the crisp air. Alexander waited near the Bethesda fountain, his tall frame silhouetted against the angel statue's marble wings. He wore a dark wool frock coat over a vest of fine grey wool, his trousers pressed sharp, a gold watch chain glinting at his waist. At 35, he carried the weight of his empire in the lines etched around his eyes, eyes that scanned the path until they found her. A slow smile curved his lips, softening the stern set of his jaw. "You came," he said, his voice low and steady, like the rumble of a distant train. Eleanor curtsied awkwardly, her hands twisting in her skirt. I thought it might be a jest, Mr. Harrington. Last night felt like a dream." She glanced away toward the lake, where rowboats bobbed gently, their oarsmen preparing for the day's hires. "Call me Alexander," he replied, offering his arm, "and dreams, Miss Hayes, are what we make of them." She hesitated, then placed her hand on his sleeve, feeling the solid muscle beneath. They walked in silence at first. The only sounds the rustle of leaves and the distant clip-clop of carriages on the park's edges. Eleanor stole glances at him, his profile strong, his dark hair neatly combed under a silk top hat. He was no simpering dandy. This man built fortunes from steel and coal, his hands calloused faintly from youth in the mills before he rose. "Why me?" she finally blurted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Isabella. She's the one everyone notices, the beauty, the light. Envy crept into her words, unbidden, but so did honesty. She had always been the plain one, the girl with the turned-up nose and hair that frizzed in the humidity, her days spent in the dim back room of Madame Duval's seamstress shop, threading needles by candlelight. Alexander stopped near a cluster of oaks, their branches heavy with autumn's first gold. He turned to face her, his green eyes intense, searching. Beauty fades like morning mist, Eleanor. Isabella shines, yes, but its surface, you see through it all. Last night, while she danced and laughed, you watched the room, the people, the truths hidden in shadows. I need that, someone real in a world of illusions. Her breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her so directly, as if she mattered beyond mending hems. A warmth bloomed in her chest, tentative, like the first flower after winter. They resumed walking, and he began to share fragments of his life. The orphan boy from Pittsburgh, clawing his way up through grimy factories, forging alliances in smoke-filled clubs. Wealth buys freedom, he said, but not trust. My rivals circle like wolves, men like Cornelius Drake, who owns half the shipping lines and envies my railroads. Eleanor's ears perked at the name. Drake, she had heard whispers at the shop of his ruthless deals, his mansion on Fifth Avenue rivaling the Vanderbilts. Is he dangerous? She asked, a shiver unrelated to the breeze. Alexander's jaw tightened. Ambition makes men dangerous. But enough of that. He steered her toward a bench overlooking the mall, where early strollers nodded politely. They sat, and for the first time, Eleanor laughed, a soft, genuine sound, as he recounted a tale from his early days, mistaking a coal baron for a valet and spilling ink on a priceless rug. His chuckle joined hers, deep and rare, easing the knot in her stomach. As the sun climbed higher, casting dappled light through the trees, Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, leather-bound book. For you, he said, pressing it into her hands. It was a volume of poetry, Wordsworth, its pages crisp and new. You strike me as someone who dreams quietly. Read it and think of me. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she accepted it. The gesture felt intimate, a bridge across their worlds. Thank you, Alexander. I'll cherish it. Their eyes met, holding longer than propriety allowed, a spark flickering in the space between them. She felt seen, truly seen, for the first time. But as they rose to part, a shadow crossed the path. Isabella appeared, her golden curls pinned under a stylish bonnet, her walking dress of deep blue velvet hugging her figure. She had followed, her blue eyes wide with a mix of concern and something sharper. Betrayal? Ellie, there you are. I waited at the shop, worried sick. Her gaze flicked to Alexander, cooling. Mr. Harrington, a chance meeting. Alexander inclined his head coolly. Miss Langford, good day. He tipped his hat to Eleanor. Until tomorrow, then same time. He strode away, leaving the air thick. Isabella linked arms with Eleanor, pulling her close, but her grip was tight. What is this? You walking with him, after he danced with me? Hurt laced her words, and beneath it a thread of accusation. Eleanor stammered an explanation, but Isabella's smile didn't reach her eyes. Be careful, Ellie. Men like him, they play games with hearts like ours. As they walked back toward the city, the poetry book heavy in Eleanor's pocket, doubt crept in. Isabella's words echoed her own fears. Was this real, or just another Gilded Age illusion? And what would her friend do if the Tycoon's choice deepened the rift between them? Little did Eleanor know. Isabella's jealousy was stirring, drawing the attention of darker forces, rumors that would soon test the fragile bond forming between her and the man who saw her soul. The afternoon sun filtered through the grimy windows of Madame Duval's seamstress shop, casting long shadows over bolts of silk and lace piled high on oak tables. Eleanor sat hunched at her workstation, her needle flying through a delicate cambric collar, destined for some society matron's evening gown. But her mind wandered far from the stitches. The poetry book lay hidden in her apron pocket, its leather cover warm against her thigh like a secret heartbeat. Alexander's words echoed, "You see through it all." Did she? Or was she just a fool, blinded by a tycoon's fleeting fancy? The shop buzzed with the usual rhythm, scissors snipping, chatter of apprentices, the faint scent of beeswax and lavender sachets. Isabella worked nearby, her golden curls escaping her mobcap as she pleated a taffeta skirt with practiced ease. At 22, like Eleanor, she moved with a grace that made even mundane tasks seem like performances. But today, her laughter rang forced, her blue eyes darting to Eleanor more often than the fabric. "Ellie, pass the pins," Isabella said, her voice light but edged. Eleanor handed them over without looking up, her freckled fingers steady despite the turmoil inside. The walk in the park had been a dream. Alexander's arm solid under hers, his stories peeling back layers of the man behind the magnate. Yet Isabella's confrontation lingered like a chill fog. "Men like him play games," she'd warned. Was it jealousy speaking or truth? As the clock on the wall ticked toward 5, Madame Duval bustled in, her stout frame swathed in a bombazine dress, grey hair pinned severely. "Girls, mind the Vanderbilt order, no slop. Those fine ladies notice every thread." She eyed Eleanor sharply. "And you, Miss Hayes, less daydreaming. Your hems are crooked." Eleanor flushed, straightening the collar. Crooked. Her hands shook now, betraying her. Isabella shot her a glance, half pity, half something darker. "She's distracted, madam, perhaps from late nights." The words hung, laced with implication. The other apprentices tittered, but Eleanor bit her lip, refusing to rise to it. The workday dragged, each minute stretching like pulled taffy. When the bell above the door finally chimed closing time, Eleanor gathered her things swiftly, eager to escape to the tenement she shared with Isabella. But her friend lingered, blocking the narrow aisle. "We need to talk, Ellie, truly." Outside, the streets of the Lower East Side pulsed with life, vendors hawking chestnuts from carts, horses clopping over cobblestones slick with evening mist, immigrants in woolen caps hurrying home. Gas lamps sputtered to life, their yellow glow pushing back the dusk. Eleanor and Isabella walked arm in arm, as they always had, but the closeness felt strained, like a seam about to split. "You can't trust him," Isabella began, her velvet walking dress swishing against Eleanor's plain wool. "Alexander Harrington, he's not for girls like us. I heard at the ball. His rivals call him the Iron Wolf. Ruthless in business and in love. Who knows what scandals he's buried." Eleanor halted under a flickering lamp, her green eyes, duller than Alexander's, she thought, meeting Isabella's. "You danced with him first. Why do you care now?" Isabella's cheeks pinked, not from the cold. "Because he's chosen you, the quiet one, the plain one." She softened, touching Eleanor's arm. "Ellie, we're sisters in this world. I want you safe. Men like him collect hearts like stock certificates, then discard them when the market turns." A pang twisted in Eleanor's chest. Sisters, that's what they'd always been, sharing secrets in featherbeds, dreaming of escape from the grind of tenement life. Isabella's beauty had opened doors, invitations to peek at high society, but Eleanor's steadiness had mended the tears when dreams frayed. Yet now, envy simmered between them, hot as forge coals. "I don't know what he sees in me," Eleanor admitted, voice small, "but when he looks, I feel alive, not invisible." Isabella sighed, pulling her into a hug. "Just promise you'll be careful, and tell me everything. No secrets." They parted at the tenement stairs, Isabella ascending with a wave, her silhouette elegant against the dim hallway. Eleanor lingered below, the poetry book heavy in her pocket. Secrets, already one burned, the dawn walk, the spark in Alexander's eyes. Could she keep it from her friend without widening the crack? That night, in the cramped room they shared, two narrow beds flanking a washstand, walls papered in faded florals, Eleanor lay awake, candlelight dancing on the ceiling. Isabella's breathing evened into sleep, but Eleanor's mind raced. She slipped the book out, opening to a page at random. The world is too much with us. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Wordsworth's words mirrored her turmoil, the Gilded Age's glitter hiding hollow pursuits. A soft knock shattered the quiet. Eleanor's heart leaped. She rose, wrapping a shawl over her nightgown, and cracked the door. A boy, no older than 12, stood there in a newsie's cap, clutching a sealed note. "From a gent, miss, said to deliver discreet." She took it, hands trembling, and pressed a coin into his palm. The door clicked shut. Unfolding the paper under the candle's glow, she read Alexander's bold script. "Meet me at the park tomorrow, not dawn, twilight. There's more I must share. Trust begins with truth. A.H. Twilight. Bolder, riskier." Her pulse thrummed. Isabella stirred in her sleep, murmuring. Eleanor extinguished the flame, the note hidden with the book. Truth. What secrets did Alexander hold? And would sharing them bind them closer, or pull her into a web where even friendship frayed? As the city hummed beyond the window, Eleanor sensed the storm gathering. Isabella's warnings echoed, but so did the pull of those green eyes. Little did she know, the Tycoon's rivals had eyes on her now too, weaving intrigues that would test loyalties forged in childhood poverty. Twilight descended over Central Park like a velvet curtain, the sky bruising into deep indigos and purples. Eleanor slipped through the iron gates, her heart a wild drumbeat against her ribs. The note burned in her memory, twilight truth. She had told Isabella a lie that afternoon, claiming extra hours at the shop to mend a rush order. Guilt twisted in her gut, sharp as a dropped pin, but the pull of Alexander's words overrode it. Her simple woolen cloak hooded her mousy hair, and beneath, her grey day dress whispered against the fallen leaves crunching underfoot. The paths grew quieter now, families retreating to their brownstones, leaving only courting couples and solitary walkers. Eleanor spotted him near the ramble's edge, where twisted trees formed natural alcoves. Alexander leaned against a stone balustrade, his frock coat unbuttoned slightly, revealing the crisp lines of his vest. The gaslights along the paths hadn't yet flared to life, but his silhouette cut sharp against the fading light. Tall, commanding, yet somehow vulnerable in the hush. "You came," he said, straightening as she approached. His green eyes caught the last rays, gleaming like polished emeralds. No top hat tonight, his dark hair ruffled by the breeze, softening the Tycoon's edge. "I had to," Eleanor replied, her voice steady, despite the flutter in her chest. She stopped a respectful distance away, hands clasped before her. "Your note." It spoke of trust and truth. Alexander nodded, gesturing to a nearby bench half hidden by ivy. They sat, the space between them charged, like the air before a summer storm. He studied her face, tracing the freckles across her nose with his gaze, not with touch. "I've built an empire on steel and secrets, Eleanor, but you're a rarity, honest in a city of masks." She swallowed, the poetry book from their dawn walk tucked safely at home. "And what truth do you seek from me? I'm no mystery, just a girl from the tenements, threading dreams for others." A low chuckle escaped him, warm and unexpected. "That's the truth I need. No games, no flattery. Tell me about your life, the real one." He leaned closer, his scent, clean soap and faint cigar smoke enveloping her. Eleanor hesitated, then let the words spill. She spoke of the cramped rooms shared with Isabella, the endless days at Madame Duval's where fingers blistered from bone needles, the nights dreaming of more while Irish lilted from neighbours' windows. "Isabella's the dreamer," she said softly. She sees ballrooms and princes. I see the stitches holding it all together. Alexander listened, his expression intent, no interruption. When she finished, silence stretched, broken only by a distant owl's call. Strength, he murmured finally. That's what I see in you. Not the flash of beauty that blinds men, something enduring. His hand brushed hers on the bench, accidental yet electric. She didn't pull away. The touch lingered, a promise unspoken, sending warmth curling through her veins. They rose and wandered deeper into the ramble, the paths narrowing, branches arching overhead like cathedral vaults. Alexander shared more. His mother's death in a mill accident when he was 10, the father's drunken rages that drove him to the streets at 14. I swore I'd never be powerless again, he said, voice rough. Railroads became my armor, but they isolate too. Trust no one, they say in boardrooms. Yet here I am, telling you this. Eleanor's heart ached for the boy he'd been, glimpsed in the man's guarded eyes. Power doesn't have to mean loneliness, she whispered. Perhaps we could share the weight. He stopped, turning to her fully. The twilight deepened, stars pricking the sky. For a moment time held its breath. His fingers lifted, gently tucking a stray curl behind her ear. The gesture was tender, intimate, igniting a spark that made her breath hitch. Eleanor Hayes, he said, voice husky, you unravel me. Their eyes locked, the world fading to just them, his intensity meeting her quiet resolve. Hope bloomed in her chest, fragile and fierce. This was real, she thought, not illusion. A soft laugh escaped her, light as birdsong, when he admitted a boyish fear of the park's ghosts, a tale from his youth. He grinned, the stern jaw softening, and for the first time Eleanor saw the man beneath the magnate, human and reachable. But as they emerged from the shadows, laughter fading, a figure detached from a nearby tree. Isabella. Her blue eyes blazed in the gloom, arms crossed over her velvet cloak. Ellie, again? Her voice cracked, hurt raw. I followed, worried. But this, twilight meetings, secrets. Eleanor's joy shattered like fine china. Isabella, Alexander stepped forward, protective. Miss Langford, this is private. Isabella's gaze flicked between them, jealousy sharpening her features. Private. From your oldest friend. Be careful, Ellie. His world chews up girls like us. She whirled, skirts flaring, vanishing into the dusk. Silence fell, heavy. Alexander touched Eleanor's arm. She'll understand. In time. But doubt clawed at Eleanor. As they parted, him pressing a quick chaste kiss to her knuckles, her mind raced. Isabella's words echoed warnings from the shop. And beyond the park, unseen eyes watched. A messenger from Cornelius Drake, lurking in the shadows, noting the Tycoon's rare vulnerability. Whispers would spread, alliances shift. What price would friendship pay for this budding love? And how long before the Iron Wolf's enemies struck at his heart through her? The morning after the twilight encounter dawned grey and drizzly, the kind of New York weather that seeped into bones and souls alike. Eleanor trudged to Madame Duval's shop, her boots splashing through puddles that mirrored the muddle in her heart. The woolen shawl draped over her shoulders felt heavier than usual, sodden with regret. Isabella's confrontation replayed in her mind, the sharp hurt in her friend's eyes, the accusation hanging like smoke. How had their unbreakable bond frayed so quickly? And Alexander? His touch on her knuckles lingered, a ghost of warmth amid the chill. Inside the shop, the air hung thick with the scent of damp fabric and melting wax from the candles they'd lit early against the gloom. Apprentices huddled over their work, needles pausing as whispers circulated. Isabella was already there, her golden curls tied back severely, her fingers attacking a length of satin with unusual ferocity. She didn't look up when Eleanor entered, but her shoulders stiffened, a silent wall between them. "Morning, Ellie." One of the girls, young Mary with her Irish lilt, ventured softly. "Rough night. You look like you've seen a ghost." Eleanor forced a smile, hanging her cloak on a peg. "Just the rain, nothing more." She settled at her station, pulling out a half-finished bodice for a Vanderbilt cousin. Ivory silk embroidered with tiny seed pearls. Her hands moved mechanically, but her thoughts swirled. Alexander's words from the ramble echoed, "You unravel me." Did he mean it? Or was this just the thrill of the forbidden, a Tycoon's whim? The door chimed, admitting a delivery boy with a crate of ribbons. As he unpacked, Isabella finally spoke, her voice low and controlled. "We can't go on like this, Ellie. Hiding, lying." She kept her eyes on her stitching, but tension crackled. "I followed because I care, but now it feels like betrayal." Eleanor's needle pricked her thumb, a bead of blood welling up. She sucked it away, tasting copper. "It's not like that, Bella. He's different. He sees me, not the shadow, but me." The words tumbled out, vulnerable. For the first time, she voiced the ache of years overlooked, the quiet envy of Isabella's effortless allure. "You've always been the star. I never resented it. But this, it's my turn to shine, even if it's faint." Isabella set her work aside, turning fully. Her blue eyes softened, but lines of worry etched her porcelain face. At 22, she carried the weight of their shared dreams like a crown that pinched. "I know, and I want that for you. But Harrington, his world's poison. I overheard talk at the market yesterday. His deals with the railroads, crushing workers, buying politicians, and that Drake fellow. They say he's plotting to sabotage him. If you're caught in the middle..." A shiver ran through Eleanor, not from the draft. Cornelius Drake, the shipping magnate with his hawkish nose and reputation for vengeance. Whispers at the shop painted him as a spider, weaving webs across the city. "Alexander wouldn't let that touch me," she said, more to convince herself. But doubt gnawed. Their walks had been intimate, yes. Stolen glances, shared laughs over his clumsy attempts at poetry recitation. Last night in the ramble, he'd recited a line from the book he'd given her, his voice rough but earnest. "What we have loved, others will love." It had felt like a vow. The shop bell rang again, sharper this time. Madame Duval swept in, her bombazine skirts rustling like dry leaves. "Enough chatter. The elite don't wait for dawdlers." She thrust a sealed package at Eleanor. "This came for you, Hayes. From some fancy sender. Mind you don't let it distract." Eleanor's pulse quickened. The package was small, wrapped in brown paper, tied with twine. She waited until the madam bustled away, then slipped into the back room, heart hammering. Unwrapping it revealed a delicate silver locket, oval, and engraved with swirling vines. Inside, a tiny portrait. Alexander captured in miniature by some skilled limner, his green eyes staring out fiercely. A note slipped out. "Wear this close. A token of truths yet to come. Meet me tonight, the old oak by the fountain. A.H." She clasped the locket around her neck. Its cool weight against her skin, a secret anchor. Joy flickered, bright and brief, but Isabella's shadow loomed. Emerging, she found her friend watching, curiosity warring with concern. "What was it?" Isabella asked. "Just a trinket from a customer," Eleanor lied, the words bitter. The rift widened with each deception. The day crawled by, rain pattering against the windows like impatient fingers. At closing, Eleanor begged off, walking home with Isabella, claiming a headache. Guilt clawed her as she watched her friend depart alone, the blue velvet of her dress darkening in the downpour. Alone, Eleanor hurried to the park, the locket bouncing against her chest like a second heartbeat. Night had fully claimed the city when she reached the Bethesda fountain, its angel statue gleaming wet under gaslight. Alexander waited beneath the ancient oak, its branches drooping like weary arms. Rain had eased to mist, veiling them in intimacy. He wore a long Ulster coat, collar turned up, his face shadowed but welcoming. "Eleanor," he greeted, stepping close. His hand captured hers, your thumb tracing her knuckles. "I feared you'd not come." "I almost didn't," she confessed, voice trembling. "Isabella knows. She followed us. She's angry, hurt. Our friendship, it's cracking." Alexander's jaw clenched, a muscle ticking. He pulled her gently to the oak's shelter, their shoulders brushing. Friendships bend under pressure, but this, us, it's worth the strain. He cupped her face, tilting it to meet his gaze. Raindrops clung to her lashes, and he brushed one away with his thumb, the touch lingering. "I've never felt this pull before. You're my quiet strength in this chaos." Her breath hitched, the world narrowing to his nearness. The locket warmed against her skin, a bridge between their worlds. She leaned in, their foreheads touching, a chaste intimacy that spoke volumes. "What truths did you mean?" she whispered. He hesitated, eyes darkening. "Drake's men have been sniffing around my operations, sabotage on the lines, derailments, whispers of bribes. He wants my empire, and he'll use any weakness." His voice dropped. "You, Eleanor, if he learns of us, he'll strike there." Fear coiled in her gut, but his arms encircled her loosely, protective. For a moment, they stood like that, the mist swirling, heart sinking in the hush. A soft chuckle escaped her when he admitted the locket was a family heirloom passed from his mother. "It kept her safe," he said. "Now, you." Hope surged, fragile as spun glass. But as they parted, footsteps crunched nearby. A shadowy figure, Drake's lackey, perhaps, slipped away into the fog. Alexander tensed. "Go home." "Carefully." Eleanor nodded, pulse racing. Racing back through the streets, she clutched the locket, the night's revelations a double-edged sword. Love bloomed, but so did danger. Isabella's jealousy simmered, and now enemies circled. What if the Tycoon's world swallowed her whole? And tomorrow, when Isabella demanded answers, how much truth could she bear to share before everything shattered? The rain had turned the cobblestones into a treacherous mirror, reflecting the gas lamp's hazy glow as Eleanor dashed through the Lower East Side's labyrinthine alleys. Her boots splashed mud up her ankles, soaking the hem of her grey wool dress, but she barely noticed. The silver locket thumped against her chest with every frantic step, a reminder of Alexander's touch, his warning about Drake's shadows. Fear and exhilaration tangled in her veins like knotted thread. What if Isabella waited at the tenement, demanding the truth? And those footsteps in the mist, had they been real or just the city's restless pulse? She reached the narrow brownstone they called home, its stoop slick and shadowed. The door creaked open to the familiar scent of boiled cabbage from downstairs neighbors, mingled with the faint lavender of Isabella's sachet. Up the creaking stairs she climbed, breath ragged, hand on the locket, as if it could ward off the storm brewing inside. Isabella sat by the single window, silhouetted against the rain-streaked pane, her golden curls loose and wild from the day's damp. A candle flickered on the washstand, casting her face in warm light that belied the ice in her blue eyes. She didn't rise when Eleanor entered, just folded her arms over her nightgown, the lace trim stark against her skin. "Where were you, Ellie?" Truly this time. No more lies about headaches or rush orders. Eleanor hesitated in the doorway, water dripping from her cloak onto the worn floorboards. The room felt smaller, the two narrow beds like barriers between them. She unclasped the cloak, letting it pool at her feet, and met Isabella's gaze. Honesty warred with caution. Alexander's secrets were heavy, but her friend's hurt was a wound she couldn't ignore. "At the park," she admitted softly, voice barely above the patter outside. "With him, again." Isabella's laugh was sharp, brittle as breaking china. The park, twilight secrets under oaks and fountains, while I sit here mending our dreams alone. She stood now, pacing the cramped space, her bare feet silent on the rug. At 22, her beauty still shone, but lines of strain etched her brow, deepening the shadows under her eyes. I saw you last night, Ellie. The way he looked at you, like you're the only star in his sky. But what happens when the dawn comes, when his world pulls you away from me? Eleanor's throat tightened. She crossed to the washstand, splashing cool water on her face to steady herself. Droplets traced her freckles, cool against flushed skin. It's not like that, Bella. He gave me this. She lifted the locket, the silver catching the candlelight. Isabella stepped closer, peering at the miniature portrait inside. Her breath hitched. Him, she whispered, fingers hovering but not touching. Envy flickered, raw and unmasked, but so did something deeper, fear. Ellie, you're playing with fire. I asked around today, subtle-like at the market. Harrington's no fairy-tale prince. His railroads, workers crushed under wheels, families ruined for profit. And Drake, that man's a viper. If he scents weakness in Alexander, he'll strike. Through you. The words landed like blows, stirring the doubt Eleanor had buried. She sank onto her bed, the straw mattress sighing under her. Why do you hate this so? You wanted a gentleman to sweep you away. Now one chooses me, the plain one, with my frizzy hair and needle-calloused hands. Does it sting that much? Isabella knelt before her, taking Eleanor's hands in hers. They were soft, unmarred, a stark contrast to Eleanor's rough palms. Tears glistened in her eyes. It stings because I see you slipping away. We've been each other's anchor since we were girls, sharing crusts and stories in these tenements. Your steadiness kept me from folly. My dreams lit your days. But this, it changes everything. She squeezed tighter. Promise me you'll tell me if it turns sour. No more shadows. Eleanor nodded, pulling her into an embrace. Isabella's curls tickled her cheek, familiar and comforting. For a moment the rift mended, laughter bubbling as they recalled a childhood prank, sneaking apples from a vendor's cart, their skirts muddied and hearts light. But the locket pressed between them, a silent wedge. Sleep came fitfully that night, the rain a relentless lullaby. Dawn broke with a watery sun, and Eleanor rose early, slipping out before Isabella stirred. She had to see Alexander, to voice the fears gnawing at her. The park paths were sodden, puddles mirroring the sky's pale blue. He waited at their oak, his ulster coat beaded with mist, a faint smile breaking through when he saw her. Eleanor! He drew her close, his arm around her waist, a bold claim in the open air. No words at first, just the press of his shoulder to hers, sharing warmth. They walked slowly, skirts and coat hems brushing fallen leaves. Isabella knows, she said finally, voice low. She warned me about you, about Drake. Is it true? The dangers. Alexander's stride faltered, his green eyes darkening like storm clouds. He guided her to a secluded bench, the wood damp but inviting. True enough. Drake's been undercutting my shipments, spreading lies in the papers. Last week a bridge on my line nearly collapsed. Sabotage, they say. But I'll protect you. This locket. It's more than a token. Wear it always. She touched it, heart swelling. His hand covered hers, thumb tracing circles, gentle, reassuring. A spark jumped between them, warm and insistent. And us, she whispered. In this web of empires and rivals, where do we fit? He leaned in, forehead to hers, breath mingling. Anywhere we choose. You're my truth, Eleanor. In a city of guilt and greed, that's rare. His lips brushed her temple, chaste yet searing, igniting a quiet fire. She closed her eyes, leaning into him, the world fading to just this, his strength, her resolve. A distant shout shattered the moment. Newsies hawking papers, cries of extra, railroad scandal. Alexander tensed, pulling back. We must be cautious. Meet me tonight away from the park. My carriage will wait at the shop's corner after dark. Eleanor agreed, pulse racing. As she hurried to work, the locket a secret talisman, excitement warred with unease. Isabella's warnings echoed, but Alexander's touch drowned them. Yet in the shop that day, as needles flew and chatter hummed, a stranger lingered outside, a thin man in a derby, eyes sharp as a hawk's. Drake's spy. The web tightened, and Eleanor's budding joy teetered on the edge. What if tonight's meeting exposed them all, forcing choices that could sever ties forever? The carriage waited like a shadow at the corner of the seamstress shop, its black lacquer gleaming faintly under the gas lamps that sputtered to life along the rain-slicked street. Eleanor paused in the doorway, her heart hammering as the day's final customers departed, their parcels of finery clutched under arms. The locket nestled warm against her collarbone, a secret pulse beneath the high neck of her grey wool dress. Isabella had left early, claiming a headache, her blue eyes avoiding Eleanor's with a coolness that cut deeper than the autumn chill. No words passed between them at closing, just a nod, heavy with unspoken fractures. She slipped out, hooding her cloak against the mist that still hung in the air, and approached the vehicle. The driver, a burly man with a scarred cheek, tipped his hat without a word. The door swung open from within, revealing Alexander's silhouette, his ulster coat draped over the seat beside him. "Eleanor," he murmured, extending a hand gloved in fine leather. She took it, stepping up into the dim interior, scented with polished wood and his familiar trace of cigar smoke. The door clicked shut, and the carriage lurched forward, wheels rumbling over cobblestones toward the quieter avenues uptown. Inside, velvet cushions muffled the world outside. Alexander sat close, not touching at first, his green eyes searching her face in the low light of a single carriage lamp. "You look weary," he said softly, his voice a low rumble that eased the knot in her chest. "The day's toll, or more than that." She leaned back, the sway of the carriage mirroring her inner turmoil. "Isabella suspects everything. Our friendship. It's like a gown unraveling at the seams. And your warnings about Drake, they haunt me." Her fingers twisted in her lap, calluses rough against the soft wool. He reached over, capturing her hand in his, thumb tracing slow circles over her knuckles. The touch was steady, grounding, sending a quiet warmth through her. Drake's a predator, yes. His spies slink through the shadows, feeding on weakness. But tonight, we leave that behind. He squeezed gently. "I brought you here for respite. No parks, no prying eyes, just us." The carriage wound through the city, past the clamour of the Lower East Side, giving way to the grander facades of brownstones and iron fences. Eleanor glanced out the window, catching glimpses of gaslit parlours where families gathered around hearths. Envy flickered. Such security seemed worlds away. "Where are we going?" she asked, curiosity edging out fear. "A place of my own. Quiet. Safe." His smile was rare, softening the sharp lines of his jaw. He pulled a small flask from his coat pocket, offering it, brandy, to warm the blood. She took a sip, the liquid burning sweet down her throat, loosening the tension in her shoulders. Laughter bubbled up unexpectedly as she handed it back. "You, the Iron Wolf, smuggling spirits like a bootlegger. What would the boardroom say?" Alexander chuckled, deep and genuine, the sound vibrating through the space between them. "They'd call it scandal, but with you, it feels right." His free hand brushed a damp curl from her forehead, lingering near her temple. The gesture was intimate, charged, yet restrained, like a promise held in check. Their eyes met, holding in the swaying light, and for a moment the carriage's motion faded. Eleanor's breath caught, her freckled cheeks flushing under his gaze. He saw her truly, the quiet strength, the hidden dreams, not the plain seamstress, but the woman beneath. The vehicle slowed, halting before a modest carriage house tucked behind a row of upscale homes on Madison Avenue. Not his grand mansion, but a discreet annex, its brick walls ivy-cloaked. Alexander helped her down, his arm firm around her waist as they slipped inside through a side door. A single parlor awaited, warmed by a crackling fire in a marble hearth. No opulence here, just leather armchairs, a sideboard with decanters and shelves of leather-bound books. A Persian rug muffled their steps, and a tray of simple fare, cheese, bread, fruit, sat ready. "Sit," he urged, guiding her to the fire. She shed her cloak, the warmth seeping into her chilled bones. Alexander poured tea from a silver pot, handing her a cup with a nod. They talked then, words flowing like the brandy, about her childhood games with Isabella in alleyways, dodging carts. His first railroad deal, bluffing investors with borrowed suits. Laughter came easier, lightening the air. "You make this world bearable," he admitted, settling beside her on a settee, their knees brushing. "In the grit of deals and deceit, you're my clear sky." Eleanor's heart swelled, tentative hope blooming. She set her cup aside, turning to him. "And you make me feel visible." Her hand found his, fingers intertwining. The firelight danced on his face, highlighting the faint scar above his brow, a remnant from mill days. Leaning in, she rested her head on his shoulder, the simple act profound. His arm encircled her, pulling her close, but no further, just shared breath, shared silence, the crackle of flames underscoring the budding tenderness. Yet peace shattered with a sharp rap at the door. Alexander tensed, rising swiftly. "Stay here." He crossed to a side window, peering out. "Damnation! A messenger from my foreman. Trouble on the lines." Eleanor followed, peering over his shoulder. The man outside clutched a sodden envelope, face urgent under his derby. Alexander opened the door a crack, snatching the note. His expression darkened as he read. "Sabotage confirmed. Drake's handiwork, a freight car tampered, delayed shipments to the ports. He's escalating." Fear gripped her. What now? "We fight back, but you, go home. This touches my world, not yours." He cupped her face, thumb grazing her cheek. "Yet know this, for you, I'd burn empires." She nodded, pulse racing, as the carriage readied again. The ride back blurred, his warnings echoing. Slipping into the tenement, she found Isabella awake, candlelit and waiting. "Where this time?" her friend demanded, voice edged with fury. "I tailed you from the shop, that carriage, Harrington's mark." Eleanor froze, the locket heavy. Truth spilled then, haltingly. The meetings, the feelings, the dangers. Isabella's face crumpled, jealousy flaring into something rawer. "You're blind, Ellie. He's using you as bait. I spoke to someone today. Drake's men. They know of you already." The revelation hung, a noose tightening. As Isabella stormed to her bed, back turned, Eleanor sank down, dread coiling. Love's spark burned brighter, but shadows lengthened. What if Drake struck first, using her as the lever to topple the Tycoon, and Isabella? Would betrayal sever their bond for good, leaving Eleanor alone in the gathering storm? The dim flicker of the tenement's single candle cast wavering shadows across the walls, turning the cramped room into a stage for unspoken accusations. Eleanor sat rigid on the edge of her bed, the silver locket now feeling like a lead weight against her skin. Isabella's words hung in the air, sharp as shears. Drake's men knew of her. The confession had poured out in a rush. The carriage ride, the hidden parlor, Alexander's fierce promise to protect her. but instead of relief, it had ignited a firestorm in Isabella's eyes, jealousy twisting into outright fear. "You're a fool, Ellie," Isabella hissed, her voice low to avoid waking the neighbors below. She paced the narrow space between their beds, her nightgown swirling like a ghost in the draught from the cracked window. Golden curls tumbled loose, framing a face pale with fury. "That locket! It's a chain, not a gift, and now those vultures circle you because of him. I didn't want to say it, but I went to the market today, spoke to a vendor who owes favors to Drake's crew. They laugh about the Iron Wolf's soft spot, the plain girl from the slums who's caught his eye." Eleanor's stomach churned, the warmth from Alexander's touch in the carriage house fading like mist under morning sun. She clutched the locket, its engraved vines biting into her palm. Why would they care about me? I'm nothing to their games. Isabella stopped, kneeling before her, blue eyes blazing. "That's the trap, Ellie. You're everything to him now, leverage. If Drake topples Harrington, he starts with what's closest." Her hands gripped Eleanor's knees, urgent. "End it, before it ends us all. Our friendship, it's all we have in this gilded cage of a city." Tears pricked Eleanor's eyes, hot and unbidden. Friendship, the word anchored her, pulling at the frayed threads of their bond. Memories flooded, childhood winters huddled under threadbare quilts, whispering tales of escape. Isabella's laughter pulling her from the shadows during tenement dances. But now, that bond strained under the weight of Alexander's gaze, his quiet unraveling of her defenses. "I can't," she whispered. "Not yet. He makes me feel whole." Isabella recoiled, hurt flashing across her porcelain features. "Whole? While I fade?" She rose abruptly, turning away. "Sleep on it then. But mark my words, tomorrow you'll see the cost." The bed creaked as she slipped under the covers, back rigid, the silence between them thicker than the rain-scented air. Eleanor lay awake long after the candle guttered out, the city's nocturnal hum, distant horse hooves, muffled shouts, mocking her turmoil. The locket compromised her now, a beacon drawing danger. By dawn, resolve hardened. She had to warn Alexander, face the shadows head-on. Slipping from the room before Isabella stirred, she hurried to the shop, the streets alive with vendors pushing carts of steaming coffee and fresh rolls. Madame Duval's was a hive of activity, gas jets hissing as apprentices unpacked silks for the season's galas. Eleanor worked mechanically, her needle tracing delicate patterns on a corset cover, but her mind raced. Isabella arrived late, her usual grace muted, avoiding Eleanor's station. Whispers rippled among the girls, rumors of a society wedding, perhaps Vanderbilt stock, but Eleanor tuned them out, eyes on the clock. Midday brought a surprise. A liveried messenger pushed through the door, bearing a sealed envelope addressed to her in Alexander's bold hand. Heart leaping, she stepped into the back alcove to read, "Trouble brews faster than I feared. Meet me at noon, the boathouse by the lake. Come alone. A.H." The locket seemed to pulse, urging her on. She begged a half hour from Madame Duval, claiming an errand for thread, and dashed to the park. The boathouse loomed rustic against the water's edge, its weathered wood a haven from prying eyes. Alexander waited inside, sleeves rolled up on his crisp shirt, revealing forearms corded from years of labor before wealth softened them. No coat today, just vest and trousers, his dark hair tousled as if he'd run his hands through it in frustration. "Eleanor." Relief softened his green eyes as he pulled her into the dim space, the scent of damp oars and lake water enveloping them. He cupped her face, thumbs brushing her freckles. "I couldn't wait. Drake's escalated, threats to my foreman, anonymous letters demanding I sell lines to his shipping cartel. And you?" Words out. They know. She nodded, pressing the locket to her chest. "Isabella told me. She She fears for me, for us." The admission spilled, her voice cracking, the rift with her friend, the envy simmering beneath. Alexander listened, his jaw tightening, then drew her close, arms wrapping around her slender frame. No kiss, just the steady beat of his heart against hers, a silent vow in the creak of the boathouse. "We'll weather it," he murmured into her hair. "Together. You're no pawn, Eleanor. You're my reason to fight cleaner." A faint smile tugged his lips. "Though I confess, if Drake sends another spy, I'll have my man row him straight to the middle of the lake." Laughter escaped her, light and unexpected, easing the knot in her throat. His humor, rare as sunlight in a mill, bridged the gap between their worlds. They sat on a bench amid stacked rowboats, hands linked, sharing dreams unspoken, hers of a life beyond needles, his of a legacy not stained by ruthlessness. Time slipped away, the sun arcing high, until footsteps crunched outside. Alexander tensed, shielding her. A shadow fell across the door. Isabella, breathless, her bonnet askew, blue eyes wide with panic. "Ellie!" I followed again. "You have to leave, now!" Drake's man was at the shop asking questions about you, about Harrington. The air thickened. Alexander rose, protective. "Miss Langford, no!" Isabella cut in, voice fierce. "This ends. Ellie, come with me before they drag you into their war." Eleanor stood torn, hand in Alexander's, eyes on her friend. Loyalty pulled one way, love the other. The locket compromised everything now, exposing her heart, her secrets. Outside, the lake lapped innocently, but danger rustled in the reeds. What if choosing meant losing them both? And as a distant carriage rumbled closer, bearing unknown intent, Eleanor's world teetered on the brink of shattering choices. The boathouse door banged open, letting in a shaft of harsh midday light that sliced through the dim interior like a blade. Eleanor's heart seized as two rough-hewn men burst in, their faces shadowed under low-brimmed hats, coats stained with the grit of the docks. Drake's hirelings, their eyes cold, hands twitching toward concealed bulges at their belts. The lake's gentle lap outside turned mocking, a serene counterpoint to the sudden storm. Alexander shoved Eleanor behind him, his body a wall of coiled steel. "Get out!" he growled, voice low and lethal. "This is private ground." The taller man sneered, stepping forward with a swagger that reeked of cheap whiskey and false bravado. "Private, for the Iron Wolf and his slum pet. Mr. Drake sends regards. Says it's time you sold the lines. Or else." His gaze flicked to Eleanor, lingering on the locket glinting at her throat. "Pretty trinket, bet it hides more than a picture." Isabella gasped, backing against a stack of oars that clattered like bones. "Ellie, run!" But fear rooted Eleanor, her hand still clasped in Alexander's, the warmth of his grip her only anchor. The second man lunged, grabbing for Alexander's arm. Chaos erupted. Alexander twisted free with a practiced move, years of mill brawls honed into precision, driving his fist into the man's gut. The thug doubled over, wheezing, but the taller one drew a short club from his coat, swinging wild. It whistled through the air, grazing Alexander's shoulder. He staggered but countered, tackling the attacker into a pile of coiled ropes. Grunts and thuds echoed, the boathouse shaking as benches toppled. Eleanor screamed, pulling Isabella toward the side door. "We have to get help!" But Isabella froze, eyes wide on the fray. Then, shockingly, she moved, not away, but forward. Snatching an oar from the wall, she swung it low, cracking it across the second man's knees. He howled, crumpling. "Not today!" Isabella spat, her voice fierce. Jealousy burned away in the heat of the moment. Alexander pinned the leader against the wall, knee on his chest, fist cocked. "Tell Drake this ends now. My lawyers file by dawn. Embezzlement, threats, the works. He'll rot in Sing Sing before he touches my rails." The man's face twisted in defiance, but fear cracked through. He spat blood, nodding weakly. Sirens wailed in the distance. Park watchmen drawn by the commotion. The thugs scrambled up, one dragging the other, bolting into the reeds. Alexander slumped against a beam, breathing hard, a cut above his eye welling red. Eleanor rushed to him, tearing a strip from her petticoat to press against the wound. "You're hurt," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. He caught her hand, pulling her close despite the ache. "Worth it. For you." His green eyes locked on hers, intense, unyielding. The fight had stripped away pretenses, leaving raw truth. No more shadows. Isabella hovered nearby, oar still clutched like a talisman. Her chest heaved, blue eyes shifting from Alexander to Eleanor. I couldn't let them hurt you," she said, voice breaking, "even if it kills me to admit it. You're my sister, Ellie. Always." Eleanor turned, enveloping her in a fierce hug. The rift mended in that embrace, forgiveness flowing like balm over wounds. "I never wanted to lose you, or this." She touched the locket, then Alexander's arm. Laughter bubbled up, shaky but real, as Isabella wiped her face. "You with an oar? Who knew the beauty had brawn?" The watchmen arrived then, badges flashing, questions firing like pistol shots. Alexander handled them smoothly, his Tycoon's authority cutting through the confusion. Statements taken. The intruders described. Drake's web would unravel under scrutiny. By evening, as the sun dipped low over the lake, casting golden ripples, the three walked out together, arms linked. No accusations, no chains, just justice served cold. Weeks blurred into a triumphant haze. Alexander's evidence, forged documents, witness bribes, toppled Drake in a blaze of newspaper headlines. The shipping magnate fled to Europe, his empire seized, a cautionary tale whispered in every boardroom. Alexander stood taller, his railroads unchallenged, but changed. "No more isolation," he told Eleanor one crisp afternoon in the park, their hands entwined on a bench. "With you, I build for legacy, not just gain." Isabella watched from afar at first, her envy softened into support. She found her own path, a position at a finer modistes, her grace turning heads without the sting of rivalry. "You deserve this light, Ellie," she confided one night over tea in their old tenement, now a shared memory, "and I'll stand by it." The proposal came under that same ancient oak, twilight weaving its magic once more. Alexander knelt, a simple gold band in his palm, unadorned, like their bond. "Eleanor Hayes, you've seen my shadows and stayed. Marry me, be my truth forever." Tears streamed as she nodded, pulling him up into an embrace that sealed their world. The city hummed around them, Gilded Age glitter undimmed, but their love, quiet, enduring, outshone it all. No prisons, no falls, just victory, hard won and sweet. In the years that followed, their home rose on the edge of the park, a modest mansion of stone and warmth, where laughter echoed through halls lined with books, not just ledgers. Isabella visited often, her own suitor, a kind architect on her arm. The locket hung on Eleanor's dressing table, a relic of storms past, and in quiet moments, as Alexander's head rested on her shoulder, she knew. The plain girl had claimed her crown, not of beauty, but of heart. 10 years had woven their gentle threads through the fabric of Eleanor's life, transforming the raw edges of that fateful 1885 into a tapestry of quiet triumphs and enduring warmth. The grand stone house on the outskirts of Central Park, with its ivy-cloaked walls and wide verandas overlooking the Hudson's distant gleam, stood as a testament to the love that had bloomed from shadows. No longer the cramped tenement of her youth, this home echoed with the laughter of children and the soft rustle of silk skirts, Eleanor's now, not borrowed. At 32, Eleanor Harrington moved through the sunlit parlour with the same unassuming grace that had first caught Alexander's eye. Her mousy brown hair, once pinned in a simple chignon, now fell in soft waves, touched with the faintest silver at the temples, framing freckles that time had only deepened like cherished memories. The modest grey woolens of her seamstress days had given way to elegant afternoon gowns of deep emerald velvet, cut high at the neck with lace collars that whispered of her Irish roots. Yet she wore them loosely, as if comfort still trumped convention. Her figure softened by motherhood, but carrying the steady strength of a woman who had faced storms and emerged whole. Alexander, at 45, had mellowed like fine whiskey, the sharp lines of his jaw eased by years of shared sunrises. His once ruthless green eyes now held a warmth reserved for family, though boardroom battles still called him away at dawn. He had sold off the riskier rail lines, channeling his empire into safer ventures, steel mills with fair wages, libraries for workers' children. The iron wolf had tamed, guided by the quiet hand that unravelled him still. "You've made me better," he often murmured in the evenings, his calloused fingers tracing the silver locket that hung eternally at her throat. A relic polished by time, its miniature portrait faded but fierce. Their children filled the house with life. Young Liam, 8, with his father's dark hair and Eleanor's freckles, dashed through the halls, chasing a wooden train, set carved by Alexander himself. "Papa, watch this!" he cried, the engine chugging across the rug, mimicking the rails that had once defined his father's world. Little Sophia, 5, trailed behind, her golden curls a nod to Isabella's influence, clutching a doll in a tiny gown sewn by Eleanor's steady hands. "Mama, tell the story again, the one about the plain girl and the Tycoon," she begged, climbing into Eleanor's lap by the hearth. Eleanor smiled, pulling Sophia close, the fire's crackle a soothing echo of that hidden parlour 10 years past. "Once upon a time," she began, her voice soft and rhythmic, drawing Alexander from his study. He settled beside them, arm around her shoulders, as she wove the tale, not of danger and jealousy, but of choices and quiet courage. The children listened wide-eyed, unaware of the real shadows that had nearly eclipsed their beginning. Liam's brow furrowed, just like his father's during tense negotiations, but here, in this haven, worries dissolved into yawns and bedtime kisses. Isabella Langford, now Mrs. Isabella Thorne, visited often, her laughter still bright as summer bells. At 32, she had found her own light, not in ballrooms but in a modest brownstone uptown, shared with her architect husband Thomas, a gentleman with kind eyes and blueprints that dreamed of bridges uniting the city's divides. No children yet, but her Modiste's shop thrived, dressing the wives of rising industrialists in gowns that blended elegance with practicality, Eleanor's influence subtle and steady. The rift of those early days had healed into a scar worn with pride. Isabella swept into the parlour one crisp autumn afternoon, her deep blue walking dress hugging curves softened by good living, a bonnet trimmed with velvet ribbons framing her porcelain skin. "Ellie, you rogue," she teased, embracing her old friend with a squeeze that spoke of forgiven envies. "This house, it's a palace of warmth, and look at you, mother of whirlwinds." She scooped Sophia up, twirling her until giggles filled the air. Over tea in the sunroom, with scones fresh from the kitchen and the children's play echoing from the garden, they reminisced. "Remember the boathouse?" Isabella whispered later, when the little ones napped. Her blue eyes misted not with regret, but nostalgia's gentle ache. "I swung that oar like a fury, thought I'd lost you to his world." Eleanor touched her hand, the locket glinting in the light. "You saved us both. And Drake. He paid dearly, didn't he?" The magnate had returned from Europe a broken man, his fortune seized in trials that exposed his webs of deceit. Whispers said he scraped by in obscurity, a shadow of the viper he once was, his name a caution in smoky clubs. Isabella nodded, a faint smile curving her lips. Justice, at last. But we paid too in those frayed months when jealousy nearly severed our thread. She glanced at Alexander, who lingered in the doorway, watching with quiet affection. Yet here we are, sisters still in a city that tried to pull us apart. As twilight fell, painting the park in hues of rose and gold, the group gathered on the veranda. Alexander raised a glass of sherry, his voice deep and steady. To enduring truths. Glasses clinked, laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves. Eleanor leaned into him, Sophia on her lap, Liam at his feet, Isabella beside them like a golden anchor. The Gilded Age's glitter had dulled for them, replaced by something rarer, love that withstood time's relentless march, friendships reforged in fire, a legacy built not on steel, but on hearts intertwined. In quiet moments, as the children slept and the house settled into hush, Eleanor would trace the locket's vines, remembering the girl who felt invisible. That girl had vanished, reborn in this life of abundance and ache. Alexander's hand found hers in the dark, a silent vow renewed. Their love had not just survived, it had flourished, a quiet revolution against the era's cold ambitions. And in the heart of it all, Eleanor knew, beauty was never skin-deep, but soul-bound, eternal as the Hudson's flow. As the final embers of the hearth died to glowing coals in the Harrington home, Eleanor sat wrapped in a soft shawl, the evening's quiet settling like a benediction over the family. Alexander's arm rested lightly around her shoulders, his presence a steady anchor after a decade of shared storms and sunrises. The children, tucked away in their rooms with dreams of tomorrow's adventures, left the parlor to the grown-ups, reflections and whispers that bridged past and present. Isabella had departed earlier, her carriage wheels crunching gravel as she waved from the drive, her life now a parallel path of contentment, woven forever with theirs. Eleanor traced the locket's familiar edges, its silver warmed by her touch. 10 years had taught her volumes about the heart's quiet revolutions. In the Gilded Age's relentless churn of fortunes and facades, she had learned that true worth bloomed not from outward gleam, but from the courage to step into one's own light. The plain girl from the tenements, once content in shadows, had discovered that love chose the unseen, the steadfast, the soul that mended not just hems, but fractures in a man's armored world. Alexander's empire, once forged in isolation, now thrived on partnerships, fair dealings, and the simple grace of family gatherings, where workers' tales mingled with boardroom strategies. "Remember the oak?" Alexander murmured, his voice a low rumble against her ear. She nodded, smiling into the firelight. That ancient tree in Central Park, witness to proposals and promises, stood as a symbol of endurance. Their love had weathered jealousies, sabotages, and the city's unforgiving tides, emerging not unscathed, but stronger, proof that vulnerability, when met with trust, forged unbreakable bonds. Isabella's role in it all lingered too, a reminder that friendships, tested by envy, could heal into something deeper, more resilient. No one had fallen to ruin's depths. Instead, choices led to uplift, to lives enriched beyond gold. The era's lessons echoed in Eleanor's mind like distant train whistles. Ambition without heart bred shadows, but compassion turned rivals into footnotes. Envy into alliance. She had risen not by eclipsing her friend, but by claiming her place beside her, two women from humble roots. Defying the divide between classes, Alexander too had evolved, his iron wolf tempered into a guardian, building legacies that lifted others. Their children would inherit not just wealth, but wisdom, see the hidden strengths, choose kindness amid competition, let love guide the ruthless paths. As the clock struck 10, Alexander rose, offering his hand. "To bed, my unraveling truth." She took it, their fingers lacing as they climbed the stairs, the house's warmth enveloping them like an embrace. In the master chamber, with moonlight spilling through lace curtains, Eleanor paused at the window, gazing toward the park's dark silhouette. The city had changed. Skyscrapers piercing higher, voices calling for reform, but their story remained a beacon. Unexpected choices birthed extraordinary lives. And you, dear listener, what threads weave your own tale? In a world still glittering with illusions, remember Eleanor's spark. That quiet fire within can illuminate paths no one else sees. Let it guide you through doubts, rivalries, and dreams deferred. True connection defies appearances, turning the overlooked into the irreplaceable. If this journey through the Gilded Age stirred your soul, drop a comment below, sharing what touched you most, the budding romance, the mended friendship, or the triumph over shadows. And to show you've journeyed to the end with Eleanor and Alexander, write the word "locket" in your comment. It'll be our secret signal helping spread these stories to more hearts like yours. Hit that like if the unexpected choice warmed you, and subscribe for more tales of love's quiet revolutions waiting in the cards below. Until next time, chase your own dawn.